Hey. All right.
You guys hear me?
No.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we're live now, so the swears must end here. Oh, and here comes Timo. So to everybody who's watching on the internet right now, I'm Brian Kroc, and the members of Big Heart Machine are slowly trickling in. So we've got, why don't you guys wave when I introduce you really quickly? We've got Isaac Kaplan here.
Yeah.
Hey, Timo, yeah, we can hear you. Well, we're live now, so, oh shoot, hold on. The swears must end here.
I have two audio sources.
So to
Whoa.
everybody, sorry, that was my fault. Okay, here we go. So I was just about to introduce everybody. So we've got Isaac Kaplan, trombone. Hi, Isaac. Hey. Ollie Hirvonen, guitar player. Nora P is Nathan Elman Bell. Give us a wave, Nathan, if you can hear me. And Nick Grinder on trombone. Sam Blakesley, trombone. Marty Kenny, and I'm assuming Arco is going to be in the same frame as you.
Hello.
Cool. Chloe Rollins, who has graciously muted herself, which was nice. And John Lake, Lake Effect on trumpet. And Timo Volbrecht. What's up, Timo? You kind of look like a old school aviator right now.
I am an old school aviator. I'm hiding out in Long Island these days.
Oh, here comes Charlotta. We don't have to mute ourselves, by the way, unless you have like a noisy.
Hi.
Hi, Charlotta.
Hey.
Oh my
What's
God.
up?
Here, Ali.
Hey.
Hello.
How fun. Oh, here comes Caroline Davis.
Nice glasses.
Sax. Oh, thank you so much. I got them on Zenny.com.
Zenny?
They look great.
Zenny. Hi, Caroline.
Hi.
Hey, Caroline.
Oh, man. This is
Hello,
so fun.
Chloe, what's up?
Hi.
Wow. Oh, it's nice to see everybody.
It's so good to see everybody. I was saying before we went live that it's so strange doing something on the internet makes me so much more nervous than doing something in person.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, but it's anxiety provoking for whatever reason. But having you guys all here is amazing. Thank you so much for being here for this listening party.
Everybody.
Yeah.
I should probably mute myself.
Oh no, don't mute yourself. I mean, you can if you want to, but as long as I think we're capable of having a.
Charlotte, I like your style. I should have gotten some wine.
I'm muted. Okay, I'm not going to mute myself ever again. I'm drinking.
Yeah.
Again. It's exciting.
Is Arco on her way? Because she's actually the first person I wanted to talk to, Marty.
Oh yeah, she's finishing up something else, but she'll be
All
ready.
right, well, I'll skip over here. Let's oh, here comes Kenny Warren.
Woo.
Oh my God. Timo.
Where is he?
Everybody.
Kenny.
Hey.
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 What's up, man?
Hey, what's up,
Oh,
everybody?
Hey,
Nice.
Kenny.
Hello, hello. Wow, this is a lot of people. It's a big band.
We got- all right, we're waiting on a few people. I know a couple people are going to be late, so let's just get started. So, thank you so much, everybody, for being here for this hang. I hope you all have a drink and are ready to settle in and listen to some music. Cheers.
Oh,
Cheers.
I thought about having a drink, but I didn't want to be the only one.
Oh, go get yourself a drink,
What
man.
else are we doing during the quarantine if we're not drinking? Just kidding.
Exactly.
All right. Pretty much it,
So-
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, so just to tell all of our live viewers, we've got 27 people listening. That's pretty great. And a lot of comments, which I'm going to get to all the comments as we listen. Basically, the format here is going to be, we're going to play the tracks from the new record. And as notable events occur, I'm going to single some of you people out to to ask you about like your approach and then to have a little more of a personal one-on-one conversation. And okay, so let's just get started and listen to the first track. And I hope to whoever I worship that it actually works.
Cheers, Chloe.
Cheers, everyone.
And feel free to talk, by the way. Can you all hear it?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna see what happens if I leave it playing quietly and talk over it. So this tune is Unblock the Stoppage. Oh wait, let's listen to Charlotte's lead alto playing. All right. So I want to talk to Timo. So go ahead and unmute yourself, Timo.
Yes.
Hello. So Timo has an interesting story for the day of the concert, which is that you maybe you should tell the story about what was going on with you the day of the show.
With my face.
Yeah. Do you all know about this?
It actually started in our rehearsal. Which what day was the show? Was it a Thursday or Wednesday? Thursday. Anyway, I remember on a Monday we had the rehearsal, and during the rehearsal, I felt like I thought I had something muscular in my face. Like for some reason, my embouchure wasn't holding, and I was just like, "Whoa, am I this out of shape?" And it gradually became worse, and I didn't know what it was. So towards the end of the rehearsal, all I could do is put the saxophone on one side, and to one side of the mouth. I had a gig that night too, and the second half of that gig, my embouchure basically just folded, and I was just pretending to play. And I was really freaked out, and the whole time I thought it was something muscular. I thought maybe is it possible to pull a muscle in your face? I guess it would be possible. So, but by the end of the night, I couldn't close my eye anymore, and I went into the ER, and I was diagnosed with a facial paralysis called Bell's palsy. And I was put on steroids immediately. Anyway, I waited for one day to see how it developed, and then I think the day or 2 days before the show, I called Brian. I called you, Brian, and said, "Hey, I have a problem. My face isn't working." And I was offering to find a sub, but we had rehearsed the music, and the music is really difficult, right? So it's not a situation where you can just jump in and read the score, because you really have to rehearse and practice it. And so, Brian, you told me, it's like, if it's possible, if you feel comfortable, obviously health comes first, but if it's possible, I would prefer you to play it. So what I ended up doing is like I asked Paul Jones actually to be on a standby sub, and he came and was so kind and came to the gig at the Jazz Gallery just because I didn't know what would happen over the course of 2 sets, but I played both sets, but only from one corner of my mouth.
And then right where I stopped the music, you had to like start off the set with a burning like triple time tenor duel with Anna.
Yeah, I was a little nervous about that.
Which is kind of asking a lot. But
it was the first tune though, luckily.
Interesting. Well, let's listen to a little bit of that, and I want to like draw particular attention to Nathan and Marty's walking. It's like it's pretty exciting. Let's see. Ah, perfect. Arco, what's up? Are you guys unmuted? Okay, Arco, I know you just got here. Sorry for putting you on the spot, but I wanted to talk to you about your comping behind the solo. So Arco, the way that you're supporting the solo, to me, like listening to it yesterday, preparing for this, I was just blown away by the choices you were making, how you were supporting them without implying any kind of harmony. I was hoping you could maybe like talk about how you approach like these kind of free settings. I know you have like these your own sort of concept that you called amoebas to me one time.
Oh, that was for Don't Analyze.
Yeah. Does that play any role here at all, or?
I'm like, I think because, no, it doesn't. No amoebas in this. They did not exist here. They would be really fucked up looking amoebas. But I mean, for this one, because right before we started to play, a few things were happening. Because I mean, my dad used to make me listen to piano before he let me have breakfast. So we'd have to listen to McCoy, Cecil Taylor. So for me, a lot of what I do now is more like emotional. So before I went on stage, like that's when my uncle's house was being engulfed in flames. Like the flames like jumped over his house. But this is the California fires.
Oh, right, that was happening.
Yeah.
Concurrently. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, it was really, really bad. And he had just called me and he said, I'm looking at the flames. And I remember in that moment, I mean, I was just trying to create like some sort of like, I don't know, I felt like I was like a fire, like underneath, like I was creating my own little world. And like, I don't know, I think that was maybe the first tune we played. So I just remember like there was a lot of energy going on and I was like trying to almost like become this fire and it would like make that fire go away or something because I was so worried. I was so worried that I couldn't even stop thinking about it. So that's a really fiery moment. And, you know, I felt like I let go completely. I like completely let go in that moment. I just was kind of like part of it, you know, part of what was happening. So, I mean, you know, I'm sure there's bits of like Jerry Allen and like Phil Markowitz and Cecil Taylor in there. But you know, in the moment, it was really just creating like, it just felt like I was a fire. Like I was just like, you know, and then, you know, fizzle away and come back in. And that was really fun though. That was like a really fun concert. So.
Wow, I love that. You can hear that, you know, it sounds like you're barely being contained, you know, and you're definitely goading the Timo and Anna into some crazy territory.
Oh yeah, it was so awesome. I thought we were all kind of weaving in and out, so it was great. Yeah.
Let's listen a little further, specifically to the break section. Let's see if I can cue that up perfectly.
Arco, how is your uncle?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt your
No,
plan.
please.
I was just wondering, how is your uncle doing?
He's doing great. What's really crazy is the day after that, he said the fire jumped. So I thought that was really awesome. So, but he's in Healdsburg, like northern California. So, but every year these fires they get worse. So, but my uncle Beto is awesome. He's been sending me boxes of Mexican candy and food like multiple times a week. Like we know
Yeah.
the post office guy. Like he's delivering us like tons of stuff.
He's got like 3 boxes, and we try to meet him downstairs because we feel bad.
It's amazing. My uncle's doing really well. Yeah.
Cool. Good to hear.
Thanks, Caroline.
All right, so where were we musically? All right, this part. I think if I'm being honest, my favorite moments in Big Heart Machine are when I write something that is just right on the cusp of completely unreasonable, and then you all figure out a way how to make it happen. Like this section right here, where the rhythm section is retarding together simultaneously with members of the brass and woodwinds playing faster and faster subdivisions. It's like it's almost scary to listen to, and I think that one part that I couldn't believe listening back was John Lake's lead trumpet playing during those breaks, especially that group of 5. That thing, I was like, damn, John. So I want to so I want to talk, you know what would be more interesting than me talking to John actually would be Chloe talking to John and asking John about his lead trumpet playing.
Hey John, good to see you.
Hey, Chloe. Let me find you here. There's like 7 pages of musicians. There you are.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I always love playing with John. John and I get to play in lots of big bands together. And yeah, you're a badass, and I love to play with you. So why don't you tell us all about how do you approach
Thanks,
playing?
you're a badass too.
Oh, thank you. How do you approach playing lead trumpet? How do you get such a great sound and command of the section and band?
Man, I really, I'm not totally sure, you know. Obviously, I work on high register playing, you know, and I just try to make it sound good.
Do you have?
I mean, it sounds pretty kind of.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, you know, I was just gonna say that, like, you know, Brian said that part is terrifying to listen to. It's kind of terrifying to play, also, you know.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of holes to step in, and certainly in rehearsal we did step in them. Some people dove in head first,
Yeah.
you know, myself included once or twice. But you know, when you're on stage, you just kind of, you got to trust the band, you know, because especially playing lead is like very physical. You're like swinging for the fences a lot of times, and we're lucky to have Marty and Nathan really holding it down, and things just kind of locked up. And I'm glad that we we got it on tape when we did.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a lot about trust, and it's a lot about vibing off the people around you. And that's one of the great parts of playing in the big band, and this big band in particular, is it's like it's a solid cast of characters, and you know you can rely on them.
Yeah.
You know, and Brian obviously writes well for the instruments, so you know it's not unreasonable. It's challenging, but it's very reasonable to do. You know.
definitely.
Cool. Sorry, I was texting to see where a couple of the other band members are and if they were having issues. Okay, so let's move on now to recessive. I'm gonna be kind of like trying to rush this along because I know that you know, I don't want to keep everybody super busy and we could talk forever, I'm sure. So let's listen to the beginning of Recessive, this beautiful drum solo by Nathan Elvin Bell. Yeah, Nathan. You know, it's a bizarre thing is watching somebody listen to their own playing. Like I was just watching Nathan having to be subjected to listening to his own solo, and it was it was interesting. So Nathan, I wanted to ask you about your approach to playing solo drums because you had you played a solo set for Caroline's series, right? A solo drum set.
Yeah.
And similarly, like here in this intro, I'm just blown away by sort of your patience with the orchestrating and, you know, like introducing new thematic material and then just sticking with it for a long time. Like it's got a very interesting form. I'm sure I would have loved to hear you do an hour of that. Would you talk about how you think about playing a solo drum moment?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely, it's something that scares the shit out of me for sure. And yeah, I guess I just try to take it as an opportunity to introduce the song and, you know, set it up in a way that's gonna feel good. And yeah, I mean, I guess I try to stick with a theme and develop it. And sometimes I end up kind of in a place that I didn't expect, and so then it's like a matter of trying to figure out a way to make that all sort of work together. And yeah, and I'm always just kind of thinking about like where I'm going. You know, I'm like, okay, I'm eventually going to be setting up this groove, so the whole thing is sort of I'm sort of like kind of leaning towards that in a way. And then like the kind of more specific things that happen, I'm not really thinking about them too much. I'm trying to think of just sort of leading into the tune.
Right. Is there a way to practice that, or do you just sort of have to do it over and over again in order to get comfortable?
I think definitely just do like improvising, you know, I think improvising over forms and playing tunes on the drums and just trying to play melodies and hear, you know, I mean, it's yeah, it's scary. Like, yeah, I get nervous definitely listening to this back, like, oh shit.
I just want to shout out, by the way, first of all, that because I'm looking at Kenny's face, that Kenny's Trio just came out with a record that Nathan plays drums on. So everybody should go check that out immediately. I saw Nathan wasn't on the gig, but I saw a gig at Balboa where you were playing that music, Kenny, and it was so awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
And I also, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know. I miss playing with all of you guys, especially been missing playing with Nathan because we put that record out. Yeah. And we had some plans to play, and it's not, you know, not, is what it is. It's good to see everybody.
Good to see you, Kenny.
Great to see you, Kenny. And also, Caroline, would you shout out the live series that you and Marta have been doing?
Yeah, it's called Art is Live. And yeah, me and Marta Sanchez are doing this live series and trying to make it something special for artists. And we will take all donations for the artist. We just wanted to find a place for people to kind of create something and share it. Nothing like too extravagant, but just things that they're doing at their place, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of solo things. We were lucky to have Nathan do something, and there's been so many great people to find to create. So I'm so happy that it's going the way it's going. So
sweet. Stay unmuted, please, because your solo on Recessive is astounding. Coming from an alto saxophone player, I'm just like, I'm constantly like jaw on the floor. Let's check that out. All right. Yeah, Caroline. Oh my gosh. Woo! So I took some notes while I was listening to this the other day. You know, it's weird because when you're like mixing a record, and I mixed this with shout out Matt Morantz, who did a great job recording and mixing this. So we listened to the music so many times. We did a typical Matt Morantz sort of like marathon session, and so now I feel like I could like sing along with your solo, Caroline, just from hearing it so many times. And taking notes, I said to myself that the rhythmic ideas that you were like, you know, sort of playing around with one note rhythmically was really reminding me of Sonny Rollins. And also the harmonic concept, because the changes are pretty weird, like combinations of chords and strange tonalities, and the way you weave through them also reminds me a lot of Lee Konitz, who's sort of an important mentor who was an important mentor to you. And so I wanted to ask you about those two people in particular and how they've influenced your approach to soloing.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you so much. First of all, yeah, it's so hard to listen to yourself on a recording. I'm sure we all have the same thoughts. Yeah, man, was anybody else in that Sonny Rollins Zoom call that happened like 2 weeks ago? He was like on Zoom and just like with his phone, and it had the little green thing, and it was like Sonny Rollins, and he was on Zoom, and I was like, oh my God. And he was like, oh yeah, I just tried my best and thought that I needed a break from practicing. And I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of him or whatever. I'm trying to do a Sonny Rollins impression, which is terrible. But he just is he's so like innocent and childlike, and he's so dedicated to the music. And he was talking about, I left one night, me and Monk were hanging out and we were leaving the Vanguard and walking down we were walking down 7th Avenue, and all we could talk about was music. And we just talked about music for hours and hours, and there is no other thing. That's it. It's music. You know, you live for it and you work for it, and that's who you're serving. And he was just like so innocent and dedicated still. And he's however old, I mean, he's so old now, and it's amazing to see that dedication and innocent, like childlike innocence. And I get that from his playing, and I really love that about him as a person and musician.
Yeah.
And Lee
like you can,
has this, yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, you can sort of hear him stumble onto something, and in the moment you hear the machinations of his brain being like, oh, that was weird, let's explore that more. I hear that same thing in this solo of yours, like when you get in that spot where you're like do 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 do. I'm gonna not try and sing it, but you can hear yourself doing the like calculations, you know, which is exciting as a listener, you know.
Yeah, thanks. I think Lee has that same like childlike, because yeah, somebody was talking about him at the it was Bill Frisell, and he was talking about it in the Lee Memorial, and he was like, you know, because sometimes Lee can be, you know, difficult to work with because he's like a child. And it wasn't an insult. It was like, he's so innocent and he's so just like, he'll say anything and he doesn't have a filter, you know, or he didn't have a filter. And so anyway, I find Lee to be the same in that way. He's like a child, you know, the innocence, the beauty of like the childlike innocence. To put in your playing like that, it's pretty magnificently inspiring.
Yeah, I think about that a lot too, because the older you get and the more sort of like responsibilities you have to people outside of yourself, the harder it is to hold on to that child within yourself. And it really does seem like the great, you know, explorers of music are people who've been able to just hold on for dear life to their inner child, you know. Wayne Shorter comes to mind too. Jen Wharton is here. Jen, I'm so sorry. Oh, I must have done something wrong that you didn't get the memo, but you're making me think of.
No, I think you did. You did send it to me. I just have no concept of time or space right now.
I'm right there.
And why would that be, you know? You made me think of, though, I wanted to do a quick segment on this live stream where everybody grabs their pet if they have one nearby. Arco and Marty have a bunch, but would you guys do that? I think that'd probably be pretty fun.
Well, it's food time, so I don't know how hard I can hold on to it.
I did.
I'll just get him in the shot.
Also, Jen, is John around? Because I actually wanted to ask him a question that I've been saying. Hey, John Fenshock. Later on, I've got a question of the day for him. Okay.
Ooh! Oh, a private question of the day.
Well, not anymore. Hey, John, how are you?
Okay, doing okay.
It's very exciting time in Shea Fenshock. It's food time for the dogs. About an hour before they start standing next to their bowls.
Yeah. I want a pet so bad, but I've heard that it's actually really hard to get one right now in New York because everybody needs some support from an animal right now. Let's keep listening because I'm really excited for the world to hear this bass solo by Marty Kenny. Let's get there. All right. So, Marty, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Woo!
Thank you.
So, like, truly, I mean, I feel like I'm blowing a lot of smoke right now, but I'm amped and excited. So, while we were mixing this, though, I was literally like, this is like one of the best bass solos I've heard in such a long time. And I think that's ironic in a way because, Marty and I have spent a lot of time together in the tour van and playing gigs all across the country and stuff for many years. And he's adamant about his dislike of bass solos. So I wanted to ask you, how do you approach playing a bass solo when you don't even like the general idea of a bass solo?
Well, I guess to begin, it's not that I am anti-bass solo. I'm anti-unnecessary bass solo. Because I feel like a lot of us have been in situations where you're on a gig, you're doing a session, and you call a tune, maybe you're playing free, whatever, and everyone takes a chorus or takes a solo, and a lot of times you kind of go down the line, right? You have like horn player or somebody, or piano player, guitar player. You go down, and then inevitably you just kind of look over at the bass player, and then bass player might like it's one of those things where I mean, I think it's great, especially like a lot of my favorite bass players come from that kind of lineage. I kind of grew up hearing like the Ron Carters and the Paul Chambers, and moving to New York, I've been lucky to like everyone else to see like Linda O, Joe Sanders, people like that on the scene. And I always appreciate, especially with those groups, I feel like when you have a special bass player like that, it's like the bass solo is more special if you kind of save it. If there's a bass solo on every tune, I feel like that kind of, because of the frequency, it's kind of a low frequency instrument.
Yeah,
and,
that's an understatement.
Yeah,
and
it doesn't.
I'll say it as a. I think we all can agree as when we're writing music, it's really hard to find a spot for a bass solo.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
which is why I often don't really, like if there's no tune, if there's a lot more up tempo things or kind of like dense harmony where there's a lot going on, sometimes it's better if there isn't a bass solo.
Marty's getting a lot of love on YouTube, by the way. I have a comment from Robert Bloomshine that says, "Marty, you killed it." Drew Williams is screaming, "Marty!"
Hi, Drew.
Russ Annixter really enjoyed the piano and guitar in and out with the bass solo, and my twin brother Mitchell. Thanks for being here, Mitch. By the way, Mitch says, "Marty, I love your playing. Every time I hear you play, I remember how awesome the bass is." And Mitch is actually a bass player, so that's and yes, I do have a twin brother, Charlotte. Sorry, I that was meant to be private and I ruined it. Okay, so moving forward here, I also wanted to talk to Nick Grinder. Nick, where are you at?
I'm here, I think. Am I here?
Yeah. You are here, and you sound great.
Fantastic.
So
am I here?
I don't know, man. Been a long couple months.
Yeah. Speaking of that, there's Nick is I mean, I don't remember what I wrote down here, but I'm just gonna go off the cuff here because Nick, I've always admired how hard of a worker Nick is. He's working all the time on Broadway and also doing like recordings and weddings and stuff. You seem to be so busy, and I'm wondering could you we haven't really talked about the elephant in the room, which is that none of us have gigs right now.
Yeah.
So would you talk a little bit about that, like all the Broadway work getting canceled, all the and what you're doing to keep yourself occupied and hopeful?
Yeah. Well, thanks. I'm not that. I mean, I'm not doing very much. Obviously, no one's busy now. But yeah, it was really, you know, it's really weird. I think probably for everybody, it's super strange to have this happen and sort of so quickly. I don't know if people saw the writing on the wall, but I was a little yeah, it was a little uprooting, you know. But you know, I'm trying to practice a lot. I mean, I was always feeling like I never really had a chance to shed enough, you know, like I've always felt like I was sort of constantly behind, just in practicing and stuff like that. And I've been trying to do that, and also I've been hitting a lot of walls doing that. But you know, I don't know. I'm trying to take it one day at a time, like everybody is. I'm trying to play, you know, I'm trying to play the horn. I'm trying to figure out what I like about playing the horns and stuff like that again. Which is kind of nice to not have not have pressure to do anything, but at the same time, you know, you're not like playing music, which is kind of just like thinking the other day, like, man, we're gonna have to, like, I haven't played music, like music with people in so long. Like, how is that? What is that going to feel like? I mean, like it feels so weird not doing that. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to be natural about when I want to play, and, you know, really trying to, yeah, just sort of make my own little space in for playing, you know, just like be a space away from all the stress that's happening,
Hmm.
pandemic wise, and, you know, uncertainty of the future wise and stuff like that, and kind of just keep it like, okay, playing is what it is, and practicing, and your relationship to the horn is such a unique and like kind of beautiful thing, that to cultivate, and it's really nice to be able to cultivate that time with it. It feels, you know, I gotta say, it's feeling a lot better than it did, you know. It's like, it's really nice to do. So, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a weird conundrum because on the one hand you have nothing but time. The whole concept of time is just completely destroyed right now, you know, where it feels like time is slipping through your fingers, and yet days feel interminable, like, you know, long and boring, and you have all this time to practice, but you have to sort of create reasons for yourself to practice, you know.
yeah, totally. You definitely do. It's really hard to, you know, you can set a schedule and stuff like that, but it's yeah, ultimately how you feel on that day is really gonna, I'm trying not to let that dominate my vibe and my space, you know what I mean, like that.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Well,
I don't
let's
know.
let's keep moving forward here. So I was gonna play a little bit of the music video for Fanfares that Luke Morantz, the younger brother of Matt Morantz, put together. I think it looks amazing. I think those Morantz brothers, I know we can all agree those Morantz brothers are just so crazily gifted. Let's watch a little bit of the video for Fanfares. Okay. Yeah, everybody. So Fanfares doesn't feature anybody really. It's just sort of like, it's almost like a, what do you call it? Like a concerto for band, you know what I mean? Like everybody's part is really hard. And so it kind of, in a way, just features ensemble playing, I guess you could say. So at this point, I wanted to talk to Sam Blakesley because he's, I think in this group, he's the most recent addition to the Big Heart Machine universe. And so I wanted to point out, by the way, Sam, that we recorded Jellycat on the night of this concert, but I didn't want to release it because it just seemed unnecessary. And also, I'm becoming more of a fan of shorter album lengths, you know, so I wanted to keep the album short. But you played amazing solo on Jellycat. And blah, blah, blah. Oh, but I hope you guys don't mind if I'm just a shameful huckster right now, but I am going to upload the mix to Jellycat to my Patreon page. If anybody really wants to hear it, that's the only way you'll be able to. And Sam's also an incredible composer for big band in his own right. And we recently had a hang at my apartment where we were talking about, we looked at some of each other's scores and we were talking about writing. So what I thought would be interesting is to hear your perspective playing this Ligeti piece as a composer. Like, obviously these are not ideas that would ever occur to somebody who's writing for a big band. So could you talk a little bit about your compositional perspective to this Ligeti piano etude?
Well, I think on the recording, I was just trying not to miss any notes, mainly. But no, I think the thing that was so cool about this, that as a composer kind of like opened me up to some new ideas, was that there's so much music that's written not even close to big band that can be adapted really well. And especially, like, I couldn't believe how some of the figures in this one in particular, like, could have been transplanted onto like a bassy type chart, like rhythmically, but then harmonically is going completely different places. So that was really fun, like as a performer too, to be playing a rhythm that looks a certain way, but then sonority wise, you're hearing something completely different behind you. But no, I liked just how all the different textures kind of come and go, and there's not really like a set amount of time that each like instrument group would play. And that was I think one of the biggest things that I had to like really count, where all of a sudden trombones, remember me and Nick had all these like dyad things that would just kind of pop out of nowhere. And if you were not counting that rest, it just kind of was really easy to miss, for lack of a better word. But I think that added really kind of unique like hills and valleys within the orchestration. So that's one of the things I really liked about it.
You actually made me think, by name dropping Count Basie, just like, because I made a video about this piece where I talked about orchestrating it. And so I was doing research on Ligeti's relationship with jazz, and he loved Count Basie, loved Duke Ellington, loved Thelonious Monk. His favorite piano player was Bill Evans, which I still find so interesting, knowing Ligeti's music, and it just but he liked Bill Evans for his touch on the piano specifically. But yeah, it's so interesting because I think that his music really translates well to a jazz sort of context, because he actually was a student of jazz music, and a lot of his peers were totally dismissive of it. I was recently reading a book of the collected writings of Elliott Carter, who I love, but he says like just horrendous things about jazz, like racist things, really uneducated things, and it makes you sort of like, it always sucks when Pierre Boulez was another person who famously hated jazz and didn't have any interest in learning about it. it's just disappointing, I think, when you find that out, because these people who you respect are not flawless, I guess. Okay, so the next piece is called Glow On, and I'm hoping that Molly McAdoo is listening and will come in the room, because I would love to talk to her. And while we wait for her, there are some questions. So we have the question from Jeremy, who I'm not 100% sure, but I think this is my one of my oldest and dearest friends, Jeremy Eberhard, who's an incredible violin player. He says, what do you think is the hardest aspect of orchestrating this music for this ensemble is? And I think the hardest aspect would be keeping it playable for the band, figuring out ways to not have everybody feel stressed and scared. Yes. All right. Okay, so I hope that answered Jeremy's question. Marilee, I see your question. I'll get to it. And so everybody, this is Molly McAdoo. She composed Glow On. Oh, also earlier in the stream, somebody said, Chris, maybe. Favorite piece is Glow On. So so that, I take that as a personal insult, because it's the only piece I haven't written, and it's your favorite piece, Chris. That's pretty it's pretty hurtful. No. Molly, would you tell us about writing this piece, like what the story behind how you wrote it, and how you came to hear the arrangement and stuff?
Yeah. Am I heard right now?
Is she heard right now? Yeah.
What's up, everybody? This is so fun. I'm having a blast out there by myself.
Oh, T-Kill says Molly Moo.
Hey. I wrote this song for Brian's 28th birthday, which was really soon after we had met each other. So I'm always surprised that you didn't run for the hills, that I wrote you a song after knowing me for like 3 months. But anyway.
Because Molly and I met when we were both on the road in Miami, and we like, I asked her out, we went on a date, and then we kept in touch, and she sent me this song like probably 2 months after we met, which is like a love song to me. So it was definitely an aggressive move.
Yeah.
But it seems to have worked out for you.
It does seem that way, which is great. Yeah, I don't really know what to say about it, except that I was moved to write something for you, having only known you for a short amount of time, and I was absolutely shocked to hear it arranged for the big band. I had no idea that it would be happening that night, and it was so amazing.
Yeah, and I love this song too, and it was really fun to arrange, because first of all, it was the first time I've ever had to like arrange something in secret. Living with a person who I didn't want to know I was working on it was like hard. And so for those of you viewers,
how did you do that, Brian?
Was that John?
How did you keep it a secret? Like, what did you do?
Well, this was pre-Quar, so Molly was working a lot. So, you know, whenever she would go to work, I would do it during her work hours. So yeah, for those people who don't know, I surprised Molly with this arrangement. I have a vivid memory of Kenny Warren saying to me, you know, this is an insane amount of pressure to put on yourself. And I think I was the most nervous I'd ever been, because I proposed to Molly like an hour before the show.
To lead a band, to lead a big band, and also propose and make it a recording session all on the same day is actually
in a video
insane.
session.
Yeah.
Like meeting. We were talking to Charlotta. We were talking earlier about meeting the parents, and oh my god.
Fully.
Oh yeah.
I mean, thank God it worked out, but it was like fully insane.
Well, I love how after it was done, Molly just said, everyone kept staring at me, but I didn't know why. And
It's so sweet to watch the video and see all of your faces because you all are constantly looking at her. Nobody is being subtle at all. Everybody's
We were all
like,
crying.
I would like to point out that the entire saxophone section was bawling except Jay Redman. He was still counting.
And he got us back in.
He's just going. He's like, I'm just.
I lost my place. I lost
But
my
like
place in the music.
Anna
Speaking
Weber,
of-
Caroline, and Timo, they were just bawling. And
Could
that's
not
why
hold
our
it
eyes
together.
are tiny in the video because we had so many tears.
Also, it was so great to see Molly's realization of the whole thing because she kept her phone was still filming and it was slowly sinking.
Yeah.
And I was just imagining like she must be computing this right now.
It was such a challenge too. Like I can't imagine what you were going through, Chloe, because you were taking a solo during the entire thing.
Seriously, Chloe.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
I remember
Oh,
just
yeah.
I remember just feeling like this is the most important solo I've ever taken in my life.
Yeah.
Because I was improvising, like at the moment you went over to pop the question, and like so my solo was like the underscore to you asking her to marry you, and it was
Yeah,
like,
Chloe, if you hadn't played so well, it might have gone differently.
right, exactly.
She would have said no. She would have said no.
It's like no weird no.
Oh, you can't hear?
Pressure.
I'm so sorry. Okay, Molly can't hear what's happening. I didn't even realize that. But I cannot turn off the Bluetooth because the feedback will be outrageous.
That's okay. This has been very sweet to see, though.
Yeah. Okay. Chloe, Charlotta, Isaac, unmute yourselves. While Chloe is speaking, I wanted to talk about the soloists on this track, Glow On, because well, first I'll talk to Isaac. I purposefully chose Isaac to play the melody because I've just always really loved how Isaac delivers a melody. And this goes back so many years because like one of my first ever gigs in New York was subbing for Isaac on a restaurant gig that you played, I think it was 4 days a week, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And so I assume that playing a 4-hour gig 4 days a week is probably what honed your melody playing chops. So could you talk more about that?
Yeah, I love the melody. I love something that's sustainable. It was Molly wrote a really beautiful tune. Yeah. And I also think I was thought that's what's most interesting about trombone playing in a way is the emotive quality and melodic playing. I've always found that to be the most compelling aspect of it.
It's also super challenging though, I think, especially in the context of those restaurant gigs, you know, to like commit to a melody and deliver it like you're a singer, which is one of your great gifts, I think, as a trombone player. And Chloe, oh wait, first I want to talk to Charlotta. Okay, so in my brain, the alto saxophone in this chart kind of like represents me because I'm an alto saxophone player. And so I don't know how that makes you feel, Charlotta, but
Great, just lovely.
So here's what I wrote. I said, Charlotta Grev has such a beautiful personal tone on the alto saxophone. So I really wanted to hear her play Molly's melody. Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, can we get into some like nitty gritty about your tone and how you practice, you know, like really get into the details of like your setup, and do you play long tones? Do you play overtones? What is sort of the secret to that Charlotta Grev sound?
Okay, I'm gonna be super honest. This is gonna be very entertaining. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
I started playing flute. So when I started playing saxophone, I thought, well, this is not pretty at all coming from the flute. And so I chose in the very beginning of me playing the saxophone, chose super hard setup. so it at least sounds very muffled and warm. And so I always get a very red head playing, and I looked insane. But at least the tone was like this, kind of, which I thought was much better than most alto saxophone that you could hear in live, or like being a teenager or whatever in northern Germany. So I just went for that, and then that helped me. And I was always trying to, and I still do. I still try to kind of sound like a tenor on alto.
Do you get that from Lawrence Stillman at all?
I love Lawrence Stillman. He's my personal hero.
I thought I knew that, and I've talked to him about that too, trying to sound like a tenor on alto. Have you talked to him about that?
No, I haven't. I didn't know that about him, but that's cool that he thought the same thing. When I heard him many years ago, that's also a good story. I was visiting New York, coming from Germany, and I saw him play at the Tea Lounge with Chris Speed. And I didn't have a clue who Chris Speed was, so I walked up to Chris Speed and asked him, "Do you think it's okay if I go talk to the alto player?" And Chris Speed, just being cute as always, he was like, "Oh yeah, he's a really nice guy." I was like, "Are you sure? Is he gonna be offended?" But also meanwhile talking to Chris Speed and like not realizing shit. And so I went to talk to Lauren, and then I took a few lessons, and I basically always wanted to sound exactly like him. But it didn't really work out, but I'm trying, it's helping listening to him. And I played along with his records a lot, and also Lee Konitz, another big influence. And one more thing I wanted to say, my setup is a little bit less intense now. Like now I'm playing like 3 reeds, but Gonzalez, they're organic, and they're a little bit more warm, and a small chamber, but an 8 opening on a Meyer.
Okay, you heard it here first, YouTube. That's awesome.
No, but I don't care about setup. I just stay with the same thing. And I got a ligature that I actually got as a present from a guy, and it was half broken, but it's making everything sound a little bit better, so I stuck to it.
Awesome.
And one last thing, I learned to play overtones a year and a half ago. And that's my life. That's the full honesty of my whole situation.
Nice.
Curtis told me how to do that. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, Caleb is kind of like has become my saxophone doctor. Like right before quarantine, I was feeling so horrible about my playing and got together with him, and in like an hour of just sort of like super philosophical, heady discussion, I was feeling better, Okay, but anyways, Chloe.
Hi.
So I don't think it'll hurt anybody's feelings if I just say that, I chose Chloe as a soloist for this because Molly just really loves Chloe. They seem to have a special connection and like be better friends than I am, maybe. No, just kidding. And so Chloe, I wanted to talk because Chloe played a really great flugelhorn solo on Stinson Beach from our last record. So I also sort of just decided that you are the person who does this kind of a thing. But that might just be my own impression of your play, because you play a flugelhorn solo on this, right?
Yeah.
Is there? I genuinely don't know. Is there a significant difference to soloing on the flugelhorn versus taking a trumpet solo?
I mean, yeah, it plays mostly the same way, but it just depends on like the kind of song. It's like if you're playing a flugelhorn solo on like a really loud song, which kind of defeats the purpose. It's like way harder because it's harder to get it to project and all of that. But if you're playing something on like a really soft mellow song, then for me at least, I think it's easier to play a solo on a flugelhorn because for me, I feel like I'm not fighting with like the brightness of the trumpet, and it's much more round and warm and just kind of lends itself to that kind of sound more. And
Yeah.
and you kind of nailed it actually. I really do love playing flugelhorn. I think I might like playing flugelhorn more than trumpet, but
Do you ever play flugelhorn in the Westerlies? Shout out to the Westerlies, one of the great bands. I mean, I have loved the Westerlies for like 10 years now or something. I mean, like the first time I saw the Westerlies play was one of the first shows I saw when I moved to New York, and and we were all so young, and I just love the Westerlies. So shout out to them. And Chloe is a member of that band. Do you play flugel ever with the Westerlies?
No, I never really do. I have for like a couple of recording things that we've done that weren't like specifically for us, but yeah, we always just do trumpet in that group for whatever reason.
I just want to read a couple comments. Holly says, "Chloe, way to go." Shout out Holly.
Thanks, Holly.
And Moses says, "Shout out to Chuck Mangione, famous flugelhorn player."
Mm-hmm.
You ever check out Chuck Mangione's flugelhorn playing or
I haven't checked it out extensively, but I do like his sound a lot. It's pretty dang nice.
Does he do a song where it's like da 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 da?
That's Herb Alpert.
That's Herb Alpert, yeah.
Yeah.
Which that song?
Sing a Chuck Mangione song though, seriously.
This is,
well,
Feels So Good, right? That was
Yeah, it feels so good.
I'm not hip.
Oh
yes!
Yeah.
Okay.
And if there are any
Right,
King of the Hill fans out there, Chuck Mangione is a reoccurring character in that show.
Yeah, he's like an
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I totally forgot.
It's
wow.
Chuck Mangione was like ruined for me because I did like a nightmare tour for 4 weeks where we played a Chuck Mangione song every day. I can't remember what the song was, but you know, if you play a song too many times, you just can't hear it anymore. Did I cut somebody off who wanted to speak?
I was just gonna say about 10 years ago, I had a restaurant gig at this little bistro on Myrtle Avenue. And this lady at the bar was really digging it. And she kept coming up to me and saying, "You sound just like Chuck Mangione."
Am I saying it wrong? Is it Chuck Mangione?
No, you're saying it right.
Okay.
She was saying it wrong. But she was really feeling the Chuck Mangione vibes. And I was like, thank you. Thank you.
Cool. And then the last person I wanted to talk to, my transitions, I'm feeling like my transitions are very inelegant. The last person I want to talk to is Ollie Hirvonen. And I remembered there was a question for you back here, so I want to try and find it. You had a question that was, how do you like playing in a big band? And then the second part of the question is, how did you get so handsome?
Well, I don't know. I love playing big bands. I mean, that's the first thing. My first experience playing jazz is playing in big bands when I was very young, you know. So it's just like it's really cool way to play music with so many people at the same time, you know.
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to talk to you in the context of Glow On is because, well, what did I write down? I mean, I can just sort of say that, you know, I think it's no secret that your guitar aesthetic is like a really important component now of my music, because you play in both of my bands. You were the first person I played a session with when I moved here. And I really hear your guitar playing. So I know when I write something that, you know, it's gonna be your thing. And so I asked you to set up the song with this. Let's listen to it. So we had a comment earlier from somebody. Oh, I think it was actually Brian Kroc, I want to shout him out. He's got a channel called Crocs in the Kitchen on YouTube. That's really, it's amazing. And I met him and his wife. They came out to one of my shows in St. Louis, and we've become like super close friends. So shout out to Brian Kroc. And he said that he really loved "Please Stop" from the Little record, and this is sort of the same thing. What exactly is it that you're doing to create that tapestry?
Exactly. It's just I'm just like trying to have a as simple as possible setup for that I can. So I just have a just like reverb effects, and then combine that with a looper. So just like nothing, no frills. I try to keep as simple as possible, and then just kind of like experiment with those two and just kind of see what happens. So it's funny like listening back to like those kind of like soundscapes that I've recorded before. It's hard because I mean it's interesting because I hear myself playing things or I hear the sound and I have no way knowing how I did that, you know, because it's all kind of happens in the moment. And it's interesting though, but it's also, especially in that case, it's kind of scary because it's kind of starting the song and you're creating the vibe from the very beginning. The same thing as what Nathan was saying before with the drum solo thing intro. It's like you're kind of responsible for setting up the vibe for the whole song. So it's definitely stressful, and especially with this song because knowing the context of that whole song and the background and the story, it's you know. But I think it's fun challenge to create those kind of soundscapey things.
Yeah.
And I think it sounds nice for sure.
Yeah. Let's listen to more of the track. Let's go. One thing I wanted to say about Molly's tune and just about her writing in general that I love is she like comes from a completely different sort of vantage point as a composer, where she just kind of like writes words and plays along with them on ukulele or sings along in her head. And so she has this great way of like making natural, like stretching and shrinking the durations of chords in a natural way. It really reminds me kind of just like great Brazilian, like Joao Gilberto or whatever, or blues guitar players in a way, you know, how like the chords follow the voice and not vice versa. It just came to mind because we've been collaborating a lot during quarantine, and the songs that she writes, they have that in common. It's never like stuck into a grid, you know, which keeps you on your toes. Okay, so now we're coming up to the last tune, and we're doing good on time. If you guys need to leave, by the way, that's okay. I love you all, and I really appreciate everything you guys do for the band. Your musicianship, your patience with, you know, being in a big band is never like a walk in the park. So thank you all for your contributions to this record. It's something I'm going to treasure for my whole life. So I'm really glad you were all a part of it. Unfortunately, Anna isn't here. She wanted to be. She has some personal family things going on, and I wanted to talk to her about her flute solo in this next tune, because on Monday, Nate Chinnon wrote about this tune, and he said that her solo was Eastern influenced, and that came as a huge surprise to me, because I would have never thought that, and I wanted to ask her what she thought about that comment. She's not here to talk about it, but suffice it to say, you know what? That's one of those phrases, by the way, suffice it to say. Is that what it is? Suffice it to say? Suffice to say? Who knows? Does anyone know?
I think.
I love you, Brian.
I think it's suffice it to say. Suffice it to say.
I think it's just suffice to say.
I think it's suffice it to say, but the it is, you don't have to say the it. You can say the it, or you don't need to say
What
the
does
it.
suffice even mean? What is suffice?
It's like sufficient.
It's like,
yeah,
like it would be
sufficient.
sufficient.
I don't think so. I think it's a nonsense word.
I think, okay, Google says the it is optional. You can say it with or without the it.
Thank you, John.
That's what I'm saying. Thank you, Google.
But so suffice it to say, Anna sounds amazing on flute on this track, and wish you could be here. And so I'm gonna not. So Kenny, if you could unmute yourself. The last track on the record was 100% inspired and grew out of me listening to this record that Kenny made called Why LA. I think a lot of you guys in the band probably don't know this, but after hearing that, I was just like, how cool would it be to orchestrate sounds around Kenny's like repertoire of extended techniques and wild sounds that he plays on the trumpet. I don't even know. And I texted Kenny and I said, could you like record those for me and like send me like something to notate it? And eventually we just sort of decided to let Kenny decide in the moment what the sounds were going to be. It worked out so great, I think. And so first of all, I want to ask, because I think one of the most memorable moments of the show for me was when I was telling this story to the audience and Kenny stood up. I don't know if you guys remember this. Kenny stood up and said, just to be clear, I'm never moving to LA. Do you remember that, Kenny?
I do. Yeah.
And so then it made me think, is the title Why LA? It's the letters Why LA. It must be a reference.
Yeah, why LA?
So what do you have against LA is my question.
Oh man, I hate to admit it, but I'm actually in LA at the moment.
That's perfect.
Eagerly, well, I'm homesick. I want to come back to New York. I'm trying to get home as soon as is reasonably possible.
Yeah, don't do it now, Kenny.
Yeah. That's a whole other thing. I got that text from Brian and I was a little nervous because I was like, well, he wanted me to like try to make maybe a catalog of all the extended techniques and sounds that I can do. And I guess maybe I've never spent that much time thinking about how to try to, I don't know, classify each one of those sounds. It was an interesting challenge to try to play that sort of textural noise world while also reading a chart and counting for this piece. But I also thought it was really fun because sometimes when you're playing in that sort of a world, you'd like to imagine that some other more concrete form thing could emerge. and that of course is more possible when you're premeditatively like composing a beautiful piece like Brian did. So it was fun to start in like this free space and then watch this whole fully formed piece kind of emerge out of it.
Kenny, you got a question here. It's from Gary, who says he hates LA too. And his question is, have you been in other groups?
Have I been in other groups, like musical groups? Yes, I guess a couple. Yeah. I think we've all played in other groups.
No, that's the only one really.
No,
Yeah.
this Big Heart Machine is a pretty good yearly salary, you know?
Yeah,
so.
that's right.
And I pay like benefits too, so.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, Kenny plays in a million groups.
For the record, I don't hate LA. I just don't live in LA, even though I have been visiting fairly frequently. And
Are you sure you don't?
I love Brooklyn. I miss Brooklyn. I want our Brooklyn back.
Okay.
This is a good transition because Jennifer Wharton lives in Queens. Jen, where are you? Go ahead and unmute yourself. Hi, Jen. Okay, is John around, by the way?
Yeah, he's downstairs.
Could you get him? Because for people who don't know, Jen's married to a legend of the trombone and also as a composer and arranger for big band, somebody that I literally grew up listening to. He's also a, what's the word? He's a fanatic about beer. And they throw a great party every year that involves a lot of beer. And also Jen and John have been doing this great series that I've been loving, which is a question a day for John Fedgehawk. And hey, John. And so I was really, this is probably the thing I thought about most about this whole live stream is what would my question of the day be for John? Because, you know, I want it to be good. So first of all, I wanted to ask John about his mustache. Playing the trombone, you know, you have a famously great mustache. I don't know if it's famously great, but to me, it's famously great as a fellow mustache man. How does having a mustache affect your trombone playing?
Interestingly enough, that's a question that was posed to us for question of the day it's in the queue.
It's in the queue.
Oh, okay. All right. I was like, did I miss it? I have another, you know what? You can save your answer to that because I have another question. Okay. So we all know that when you go to play a gig, having a beer beforehand is often a very good idea because it'll help you loosen up. It'll, you know, contribute to sort of a relaxed vibe. Nobody wants to listen to, you know, stressed out, anxious jazz musicians. But there's sort of this curve where if you have one too many beers on a gig, you become unprofessional. You may never get called again. You might embarrass yourself. You might stop playing well. So my question is, what is the optimal number, the apex of that curve, for how many beers to play a jazz gig as well as possible?
You want me to answer now, or do you want me to answer it officially on the show?
Answer now, please, if you don't mind.
Okay. I think it's 4.
There you have it.
All right.
possibly 5.
All right.
4 to 5.
Depending on how long the break is between sets.
That's a lot.
It's usually
a lot.
2 before,
Okay.
1 on the intermission, and then 1 after. So, maybe 2 on the intermission. It's pretty good.
That's
what
spread
kind
out.
of beer, though? What kind of beer? That's the question.
And Caroline wants to know what kind.
Yes.
It really depends on where you're playing and what they're serving.
Sorry, the dogs are fighting.
Hold on.
Wait, it's probably the answer is the coldest. Or whatever's free on the gig.
Because if it's like an 8% beer and you have 5 of those,
you can't do that. It's got to be.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's
4 to 6%.
4 to 6%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think if you have more than 2 beers to start, it better be a short 1 set. It's possible to have 2 and bring 1 on the stand, and just kind of nurse it. But I usually won't get through that third beer if I do that.
There's a method.
Yeah. The goal is to get to a place and then maintain that place and not exceed, because that, as you mentioned, could be adverse effects.
There you
Fair
have
enough.
it.
Isaac Kaplan said, Warbud Fedweiser 2020.
Fedweiser.
I don't
like
know what
it.
that means.
I like it.
Um,
What are you wearing? Oh no, he's wearing Miller Time.
Yeah.
Free hat.
Okay. Now I also have a question of the day for Jen Wharton, because
Do
it's
you know
no
it's my
secret.
birthday tomorrow?
I didn't know it's your birthday tomorrow.
It is.
In 3 hours.
How are you gonna
Happy
celebrate?
birthday. How am I going to celebrate your birthday? I don't know. How's everybody going to celebrate Jen's birthday?
I mean, I think we should collectively sing on the Zoom together, you know, in our own time, and then everything will be created. And whoever
It's
is
gonna be
recording
amazing.
this, we'll play it back, and we'll be like, yeah, hell yes.
We would have
that
to
sounds
fully
great.
commit to that, because it's going
I
to
mean,
sound horrendous.
I think
And nobody can be on mute.
Or if you know
Yeah,
the
no one on
exact,
mute.
if you know the exact rhythm of the delay, you could time it so everyone's note comes one note later in time.
Very true. Very true.
Well, let's sing Jen
Latency.
cacophonous happy birthday. And also, just for fun, because I always want to do this, can we go 1, 2, 3, 4 and try to clap at the same time and see how that
Okay.
goes?
Okay.
Okay, ready?
I'm ready.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It sounds like our time is so bad.
I'd like Big Hard Machine.
All right, ready? Happy
birthday
to Jen.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jen.
Happy birthday to you.
Amazing.
All right,
This is
what's
where
my
we lost-
question?
So your question is, you play in a huge amount of big bands in the city, if I'm not mistaken. I've heard that you do. So which big band is the best one?
Oh, I just gotta be Big Heart Machine. Oh wait, John Fetchcock, New York Big Band. Actually, I don't play in that band, so I can't say that. Big Heart Machine, of course.
I just wanted to put you on the spot with that one. Kenny's comment, I think this video would get taken off the internet if I read it aloud. So
Yes, it would. Oh, here's my other doggy.
Hey.
Hi.
Oh.
But I did want to ask Jen. So before I met Jen, I had seen her play a million times, because she really does play in a lot of big bands. And also has had a lot of Broadway chairs, and is sort of just like a really in-demand low brass player who, interestingly, I think, started learning how to improvise after mastering the trombone. So, I say mastering, but you know. So my question to you is, are you ready to play a solo on the next Big Heart Machine record?
It depends on what it is. Because, you know, in certain cases, I'd rather be naked in front of the band rather than improvise. So your choice.
Let's see if we've got any more comments. Okay. Oh, no. I'm not going to read that one. Okay, so it's 9 o'clock. So I want to again say thank you to everybody. This is really fun. It's definitely nothing nearly as wonderful as playing an album release show, but it'll have to do. And I miss you all. Hope we can play together soon. Let's watch the video for I haven't decided actually how to pronounce this, because the word is pareidolia. So I'm saying pareidoliac is not actually a word, but pareidoliac. All right. So that's the whole album. 40 minutes of intense big band jazz. To everybody who's on the live stream, thank you so much. I see a lot of great comments. Yes, I hope we will do this again. Yeah, thanks everybody. This is all so very nice. Thanks again to you guys in the band. Miss you all. Do you want to all unmute yourself quickly and maybe just and we can just have like a minute of just an actual chill free for all?
Chill free.
What's the plan next?
Like, should we all just like start screaming like at the same time?
That's what we
just
need.
like a
probably.
collective,
It's
like
I mean, like
Tension breaker.
blood-curdling scream.
That's what I need.
Like a Kenny Warren sound?
Yes. Exactly.
Brian, we need to do a performance. Let's do a socially distanced performance at like a drive-in or something.
Yeah.
That would be so fun. I have seen people doing drive-in tours. That's such a cool
Drive-in,
idea.
Yes.
Let's do it.
I
I don't know where there is one.
We would need a stage the size of like a football field to do a socially distanced show, wouldn't we?
We'll do antiphonal big band.
Well, anyways, thank you guys again. This was so fun. And I miss you all. So
Miss you all too.
See you guys.
So great to see you all.
See y'all soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh yeah, how long are we gonna stay on?